Hi guys, nice to see you. Today we're gonna cover Izotope Ozone 9. This video is for serious producers and audio engineers who understand that every explanation should be made step by step. So remember, a lot of important stuff, not only in the beginning of this video, in the middle, some priceless suggestions can be in the end of this video, so watch it fully. I'm gonna talk about its benefits and disadvantages actually, step by step, how to consider Izotope Ozone. These videos on this channel is just light entertaining edition for one of the most serious audio production courses. It's 9 months in Skype, I've been doing it for 7 years, it's very crafted system. Hundreds of students graduated from this course. We have homeworks on this course where we compare your project to the best sounding mixes of all time and we bring your quality to the same level. So you're welcome to contact me to get a free trial class. How to contact me information you can see on the screen. The whole income from this YouTube channel I donate to help cats and dogs, and this YouTube channel was ranked as the second best channel on audio production subject by Feedspot in 2019. But Izotope guys contact me and said, okay, we're gonna give you plugins. Izotope Ozone is very old plugin. I've been using it for more than 15 years. I was a user of Izotope Ozone 1. The point is, I don't believe that plugin can help you with your audio mixing. Your skills can help you with your audio mixing. And only then, after you really experienced and very skillful audio engineer, plugins start to be serious weapon. Izotope Ozone actually can be very powerful tool. We learn all possible plugins, comparing different techniques. After different topics, we have homeworks to double check if you really understand what we're learning. So it's cool because it's not only theory like on most courses. I really open your projects in real time and I check all your movements, where it's really understandable if you really get closer to the best sounding songs of all time. As you understand, while we open your projects, I should have the same plugins like you have. I actually have pretty all possible plugins, but Izotope Ozone is definitely one of those. So if you're gonna be attending this course and you already have Izotope Ozone 9, it will be so easy for you because this plugin covers pretty all possible processors. Next part of this video is the strategy of what to do with Izotope Ozone 9. I've written over here some short bit. It's absolutely unprocessed, it's super simplistic. Like standard modern kind of a trap lead sound like this. Genre actually doesn't matter, real audio engineering, it's all about amplitude, phase and frequency. A bit later we're gonna check rock song as well in this video. Imagine there is no individual instruments right now and you are mastering engineer who works on the final song. Very important skills of mastering engineer is not to spoil already good sounding mix. You know, you don't take perfect mix and you modify it in a random way, applying some presets. Just by default you boost some frequencies, by default you make it more compressed or something like that. First of all, listen to this song. You don't want additional harshness by boosting high frequencies. You don't want additional boominess by boosting low frequencies. It can be overcompressed. Your compressors may modify balance between your instruments. What's wrong with this song? You start from the last processor, you apply Dither, you activate it, so you don't mess with frequencies the most sensitive for your ear, so you don't put too much random noise, which is Dither is actually. You transfer it more to high frequencies. For this you use so-called shaping. The higher Dither, the more chance that you mask artifacts like quantization noise. The lower Dither, the less chance that you mask it, but at least your mix sounds clearer without this additional noise, so you don't sacrifice dynamic range in this case. If you don't understand what I mean, it's totally fine. I kind of not explaining right now Dither processor. So why it's cool to start with Dither first? Because Dither can do something with your sound. Some people claim there is no difference, but some people can notice some more highs or something like that, so people already modify their tone. Sometimes Dither glue mix together a bit more. Anyway, this processor will be in your chain, right? And now when you, let's say, you're gonna be working with Equalizer, you're gonna hear all your movements on Equalizer through this Dither, so you already gonna hear the kind of the final sound of your mix. Processor called Maximizer. First of all, in settings of Izotope Ozone, I recommend you to click here on I/O, which means input output, and you go to type. You should choose integrated. Takes average LUFS levels and shows you like tendency of overall volume. So my choice would be integrated, but again it's up to you what you choose over here. By lowering threshold, in this case you boost overall volume of your song. You can create some additional space, you know, like safety space. You put on the ceiling something like -0, -1, or -0.3. Different theories over here, I'm not gonna explain it now. Spotify may require to have something like -1 decibels. Kind of an issue with this meter on Izotope Ozone, you should restore it. If you're not gonna restore, so now let's say -14, and I bring threshold, let's say, up. Now it's -15, -16, -17, so it could take a lot of time until it really goes to the proper point. Instead, whenever you change threshold, just click on it, then press it. And it instantly shows you around 20, around 21. Real peaks, they go higher than headroom and they create so-called clipping. Sometimes meters are not so fast to really demonstrate this issue. You're gonna have this peak limited instead of clipped. That's it. So it allows you to minimize distortion. Next, on the left side, you have modes. Should have very trained ear. On our course, we compare all possible maximizers, and our Izotope Ozone one of those. And we make battles between those limiters where we really check why each limiter sounds so different. I point out what kind of differences between those limiters, pros and cons of each limiter. There is no best limiter because every limiter has pros and cons. And for each song, it may be its own specific limiter. And Izotope Ozone, it's a good option because it has a lot of different options over here. There are third-party limiters which may beat Izotope Ozone in some cases. In some cases, Izotope Ozone will beat them. It has a lazy option for lazy audio engineers. It should be called for lazy audio engineers. You click on it, you specify your target in LUFS, and your limiter start to find this level by default, so it's like automatic limiter. I really don't believe in automatic processors. Sometimes they are good, but in this case it flows, right? By having a bit higher threshold, lower threshold in real time, it may modify my balance which I created if I mixed the song in the perfect way. I already had automation, I really crafted all my movements. I don't want this limiter to mess with my balance right now changing the threshold. For some people it may work, maybe not for me. Right? But again, it's cool to have this option, maybe it will be your cup of tea. The most important part of this limiter, it's fast-slow. It's a very long story, it's all about residual compression. Simply speaking, if you want right now to understand what to do, I'd say next. If you choose fast options, it means you're gonna have the highest efficiency of your limiter, so which means with not so low threshold you're gonna have the loudest possible song. But at the same time it may bring a lot of noise and artifacts which happen in between highest peaks of your waveform. If you want less artifacts and like more smooth tone, like more pleasant to hear, you choose more slow mode, but slow mode will not sound as loud as you want. So your song may sound too quiet, it will force you to put threshold more and you're gonna create overcompression. So you're gonna hear actually this kind of a compression from your sound. Again, takes a lot of skills to really finalize this idea how much release. It basically controls release of your limiter, and it's so important to find this position properly. Also, you have pretty nice, interesting additional functions like, let's say, Transient Emphasis, which means sometimes limiter eats up punches, so your drums start to be less punchy than in the mix. So kick and snare may sound, instead of like tish, they sound more like ish, ish, instead of this kind of a t, t, t. So attack will be lost. So not to lose it, you can kind of bring punch back. So you sacrifice punch, you create this punch in advance a bit more, and then by sacrificing punch, you don't sacrifice the whole punch, because you emphasize this transient before you sacrifice it. Different limiters handle it differently. Some limiters make your sound darker or more muffled, or they lose density, or they create overcompression. I just gonna point out the most important parts of this plugin, so I go further. So we come closer to -14. I want a bit more kind of a strong bottom end. I want it a bit fatter and juicier, and you may apply Multiband Compressor. So now I use module called Dynamics. Imagine limiter is something on the output. It modifies your sound in a specific way and it has to be there. So we already have Maximizer like a final touch. Let's say it makes your sound green. When you're gonna set up your dynamics, your compressor, you're gonna already hear this green song. And you're gonna make it perfect, but you still gonna hear your green song. If you don't have Maximizer, you right now randomly will create your bottom end. You're gonna make it red song, and then suddenly I engage Maximizer and suddenly it starts to sound green. So it will be like unexpected new sound. So it's already green, and now hearing green sound, you will adjust your lows by using Multiband Compressor. So you're not gonna have any surprise because you already have green, nice sounding song. I choose range from, let's say, 0 to something like 100. Now I'm not gonna be using limiter, so I put ratio 1 to 1. Also, not to compress mid frequencies, I should bypass compressor and limiter over here. In this case, I choose 1 to 1 on a compressor and 1 to 1 on a limiter for high frequencies. So I don't mess with high frequencies, I mess only with low frequencies. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing now. The most valuable here is strategy, which I show you. I give you ideas like main point over here that you go from the last processor to the first processor. Next thing what I do, I may want some equalizer, let's say, right? So I use EQ. If I don't want to feed my compressor because I already set up some threshold on my compressor, I may use equalizer after compressor now, and maybe I, let's say, try some smile EQ. You simply may say, I don't like this kind of smile EQ. Sometimes your mixes really don't need to have smile equalization. Let's say this song has some bugs in it, so you may decide to work with some mid frequencies, but you should understand it will be very mild processing because it's a mastering, it's not individual track. Also, a lot of people don't realize that monitoring can be your enemy. All your monitors, your studio setup. On the course we have a topic studio setup where we learn all possible situations, all disadvantages. There are so many just statements which never work or something like that. So you really should understand every little disadvantage. This is the next part of this video. Now we're gonna learn different modules. Obviously, in the context of this video, it's impossible to learn every little detail of each module, but I'm gonna show you the most interesting. First of all, remember, it's not Izotope Ozone plugin which mixes and masters your songs. It's you, it's your skills. Instead of like imagining Izotope Ozone as a tool which magically does something to your sound, instead learn equalizers, learn dynamics, saturation, and learn stereo field. If you understand these four things, then you find tools which corresponding tools to these four subjects. If I need EQ, I can use from Izotope Ozone this, and this option, with benefits and disadvantages of each one. First of all, I recommend you never use presets. For like B- quality of audio production, you can use presets, why not? But in the long run, my personal suggestion for you, if you really want to progress, if you're really into audio production, you should do everything on your own. If you want to work with frequencies, frequency balance, no matter if it's a mastering or mixing, you can choose Izotope Ozone for all of this. You have EQ1 and EQ2, which is totally the same. Why you have two modules is just because of sometimes some people kind of prefer to make some balance, and then after some other processors, they want to have another balance, you know, like having second equalizer. What I like in previous version of Izotope Ozone, you could point out with your mouse cursor and plugin showed you the value where you are. So let's say this is Izotope Ozone 4, and if I play the same kick, let's say I point out over here, and over here on the bottom right side, it shows me what frequency it is and level of this frequency. Very useful. So I hope Izotope Ozone bring this feature back in Izotope Ozone 10. Dynamic equalizer. What it does is basically still the same equalizer, but what you do with that, it reacts dynamically only if something happens in this range, and it happens very loudly. Only in this case it cuts more frequencies, and it cuts this frequency only when something very loud happens around this frequency. Now let's say I try to make snare drum smoother, right? My snare may sound too sharp. It cuts this frequency around 3.5K. This mix simply doesn't have too much information in this range, and that's why equalizer doesn't do it with anything else. It really reacts only on the snare. Then you have match equalizer. Theoretically, it's a very cool thing, which means, let's say your song has one balance of frequencies, and your favorite song has the other balance of frequencies. So you can measure your song, and you can measure your favorite song, and if your song has some other frequencies, this plugin makes it matched. If you have, let's say, not enough 6K, and your favorite song has more 6K, it will bring your 6K a bit louder, and your song will be more similar in frequency balance. But you know what? I don't like this approach. Black color, it's our song. Red color, it's a reference track. Now let's say our frequency looks like this, and our reference track, let's say, looks like this. Let's say in this region, reference track sounds louder than our song. So what Equalizer of Izotope Ozone will do, it make this range in our song louder to be more similar to the reference song. Let's say you may have some snare drum or let's say acoustic guitar in this range, which sound pretty fine because you mixed it. You did this acoustic guitar smooth and nice, you put it at specific volume in the mix, it will be too exaggerated. Your acoustic guitar may be sounding now too loud or too harsh or something like that. So I absolutely don't feel right about these approaches, to be totally honest. Let's say your reference track may contain, let's say, sub kick, right? Which is around like 30-40 hertz. Kick sounds like boom, you know. But your song, let's say, doesn't have this type of a kick. Your song, let's say, sounds more tight kick, more like tick tick. Kick should be now boosted by, let's say, 5 dB louder. No, your kick only can sound boomier because of this 5 decibels of boost. So why you should boost your lows just because of your reference track has some other tone of the kick? Check it out. In this project we don't have hi-hat, we have kick, snare and percussion. So we don't have hi-hat. It has only some part of a highs coming from, let's say, snare drum. So let's say our balance looks like this. So we don't have highs. But our reference track, let's say the same genre, similar song, and it has hi-hat, maybe even cymbals, and reference track will have a lot of high frequencies like this. So this Match Equalizer will do what? It will bring our high frequencies of our song all the way up. We only will make our snare too harsh, too noisy. We're gonna make all these very bright harmonics of the bass to be just like a background noise. I mean, ask yourself, to be totally honest, if you're a good mixer, right? You sit, you take your song, and you really do everything this song requires. This kick with this balance, this snare with this balance between instruments. Do you want some equalizer randomly boost and cut some different frequencies of your song? If you don't have too much skills and you kind of just do mix for fun, like randomly, you did something, you don't like it, you apply this Match EQ and it sounds better and you say, I like it. In this case, no problem, you know. But I mean, I'm talking about real audio engineering, when you make perfect mix and then it randomly changes it. Even some instruments may sound different in different frequency ranges. One song has guitars and plug synthesizer, but second song has, let's say, pad and bell type of synthesizer. Obviously they will have different frequencies because those instruments simply sound different with different frequencies. How you can match one track and the other track? But I definitely can give you an idea where it's more or less possible. So for example, I would like to use Match Equalizer, for example, just to get some ideas, let's say. Instead of like really applying it, for example, I would compare my mix to some reference mix for educational purposes, I'd say. I would say to myself, okay, I have more lows, but because of I have sub kick, but that song has more like fat bass without, let's say, more like 80 hertz, but maybe not too much 30, 40, and that's why I have more 40 hertz, and this mix has less 40 hertz. Why I have more highs? Because the whole my song with crashes, like you know, while let's say reference track may have just very tiny quiet, like tick 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 hi-hat, you know, like very quiet. So that's why of course I have more highs than reference track. From the other side, let's say guitarists. As you know, guitarists are all about tone. You have your favorite rock band, let's say AC/DC, and let's say you find some AC/DC song where in the very beginning Malcolm Young plays a rhythm guitar, let's say, and it sounds so warm and so nice. Agree, it would be so nice to see your frequency balance, right, in comparison to the frequency balance of Malcolm Young's guitar. You would never make your guitar sound the same like Malcolm Young just because of you have different core of the tone, you know. But it's just interesting maybe to check balance. You have vintage equalizer with its own curves, you know, it just simply sounds different to the standard equalizer of Izotope Ozone, so it can be your like alternative equalizer. Then you have so-called low-end focus processor. It's a new feature, it's only available in Izotope Ozone 9. It makes basically more transient punch for specified range. Volume control. Let's say, first of all, it's a module called Dynamics. What's cool about Dynamics, you can use it as a standard compressor. It's not necessarily to be multiband compressor. You can apply it, let's say, in mixing, just a standard compressor. You just make sure that limiter and compressors don't work together if you don't want one of these. If you just want compressor, put on a limiter 1:1 ratio. So if you use compressor, you use, let's say, 4:1, right? You adjust attack, release, softney or hardney. The lower you put it, the more compression you get. That's it. Plus you have parallel feature over here, which is useful. Or if you just want a limiter, you put on the compressor 1:1. You put some value on the limiter, let's say 30:1, and then you move already limiter threshold over here. So you limit peaks instead of just lowering them in volume. In Izotope Ozone 4, you have not only limiter and compressor, you had expander gate, which actually I like to use it in multiband mode. Sometimes you don't want to gate the whole frequency range, and you don't mess with frequencies from 20 to 5K. Honestly, not a lot of people really needs it, it's more like advanced ideas. But you can use dynamics in multiband mode, so you create any number of bands you want, right? You have its own settings for this range, you select the next range, and you have your own settings for the next range, and the next, and the next. So it's a multiband compressor, which is very useful tool in mastering. Next module, you have master rebalance. It's just so phenomenal, to be totally honest, so let me show you. Always put it before the maximizer. If you work on a higher market level, you know, for major labels, usually you master perfectly mixed songs by very good mixers. But if you work on more available market, where many more clients actually, where people maybe don't mix too good, you know, crazy volume for the vocal where vocal jumps out of the mix, or vocal like really drowning in the mix and you totally don't hear it, or some rock song may not have any drums, you know, you don't hear kick, snare, they sound too quiet. It allows you to, let's say, rebalance vocal. So now this is initial levels. Treating people just like pawns. And if for some reason you decided that this vocal sounds too quiet, you can raise it. Treating people just like pawns. You should have pretty trained ears to notice artifacts. Actually, some artifacts happen. When you boost volume, anyway, you change sound of guitars and drums just a bit. Guitars and drums still sound pretty acceptable, and vocal sounds amazing. You hear those artifacts only if you boost pretty a lot. Treating people just like pawns. You suddenly hear like guitar start to float, you know, it starts to be louder, quieter, sometimes even brighter, darker guitar. Check it out what you can do with drums. Treating people just like pawns. Treating people just like pawns. Like no drums, right? Treating people just kick, snare. It's totally unmixed song. It's Telefunken's project, and this module just phenomenal. This is the greatest tool of Izotope Ozone 9. I mean, among new features is the best one. Then you have Maximizer, which I already explained, so it's for boosting your volume. Then you have Spectral Shaper, it's a Deesser. So let's say if you have some harsh frequency which jumps out, honestly it has a lot of similarities to Multiband Compressor or Dynamic Equalizer, but it's pretty standard thing. You choose Spectral Shaper. Whenever this plugin hears some sibilances on your vocal, you put this plugin just on the vocal in mixing, not on the master bus. That's why Izotope Ozone is so powerful. It has a lot of different processors. You have Vintage Comp, which has saturation, so it's a compressor with saturation. And you have Vintage Limiters. Then you have saturation module called Exciter. I was a senior audio engineer and radio producer for 10 years for the biggest broadcasting company in the region. In my home country, now I live in Canada. It wasn't like simple radio station or something like that. We had like 20 journalists, 4 editors, 2 music editors. We had 300 people hired for this company, 300 employees. It wasn't just like reading from the internet some news. It was like real powerful broadcasting company. I was in charge for most important like radio spots or commercial clips and all this stuff. Sometimes when you're in so tough time schedules, you don't have time to have like million plugins, having fun, like experimenting with different things. And I used Izotope Ozone plugin, actually not this one, Izotope 4, Izotope 3, so I could use quickly EQ, and in radio production it's pretty popular to have like saturation when you have just like simple vocal recording, let's say 1 2 1 2, and then you make it like a movie trailer, so compressed, so saturated. And I used this particular module all the time. It was my like go-to tool. You may create saturation in a multi-band way, which is absolutely phenomenal, because sometimes you don't want to saturate, let's say, some muddy frequencies, but you may saturate frequencies which is the most audible for our ears, let's say upper mid-range, or you can create like juicier bottom end of the voice, you know, and you can choose amount of the saturation over here, amount, let's say, over here. So I saturated only low, so I saturated only upper mid-range. And the coolest thing about this, I can do it in parallel mode. So I lower mix, I lower mix, and I have saturation for lows and for upper mid-range, but in parallel. Parallel saturation means I have tone, original tone, blended with saturated option. So it's not just totally modified sound, artificial sound. It's some part of our original sound blended with modified sound. And for each band, you even choose type of saturation, you know. So it can be just like old sounding transistors, more kind of modern sounding transistor. It can be tube saturation, it can be tape, you know. So many different options over here. It's amazing. And you may have stereo imager, which a lot of people underestimate. And actually a lot of people don't use it properly. On our course in a topic called Panorama, we learn stereo field, monocompatibility, how to consider phase, how to use Haas effect properly, how to measure everything correctly. Actually, I recommend usually this tool on our course. We use exactly isotope imagers mostly. The most important tool is this little right side. It's called correlation meter. This is your best friend when you work with stereo. A lot of people don't realize it. It's pretty sad, because it's your best friend. Multiband stereo imager. So many things to say in one short video, it's just impossible. But anyway, company included new feature, 2 modes of stereoize feature. It allows you to widen your sound in different ways. By the way, if you want to know what's new in Izotope Ozone 9, we go to Izotope Ozone website. It will be faster than watching some video on YouTube. You just go over here, you open, see all features. You have new stuff over here. Master rebalance, low-end focus, output section. So output section is very important. Pretty nice, interesting feature is a reference feature, which means you press this plus, you choose any audio file, let's say your favorite song, and then by clicking over here, you can activate your song. When you press play, instead of listening your song, you're gonna listen to your reference track. When you disengage this button, you press play and you hear this song, which is your mix. My Cubase 9.5 crashes. I checked the same feature from Izotope Ozone 8 and it works. So I'm sure Izotope will fix it pretty quickly, so don't worry about that, it will be fixed pretty soon. Another pretty interesting feature for lazy audio engineers called Gain Match Maximizer as our final volume boost. And also, let's say I use standard equalizer, right? I put it as a first module. You should understand, if gain match is not activated, whenever you don't have this equalizer, your mix will be quieter. I specifically boosted too much lows and highs to give you an idea. So it just sounds much louder. So when you activate gain match, it allows you to hear pretty the same volume before EQ and after EQ. I mean, sometimes this feature is not useful because, to be totally honest, our ear doesn't work just by measuring RMS level or something like that. It's more sensitivity to upper mid-range, but we still feel different frequency ranges with different volume. Anyway, I claim that nothing beats your ear, you know. Your ears and your skills, your movements is the way to go. It always guarantees that you can match volume before EQ and after EQ totally precise. Right now, when I disengage equalizer, vocal sounds very loud. Treating people just like treating people just like And when I activate equalizer, actually vocal sounds much quieter. So this gain match not always works. But I can agree, if you don't boost too much frequencies maybe, you know, just a bit, like tiny little movements, and you match it, it could be working. Okay, it's a very nice tool, very powerful. It's so proven plugin. I've been using this plugin for more than 15 years. I wanted to create a course where people go out from the course to be full guru of audio engineering. We learn everything possible related to audio, 80% of it mixing and mastering. You can use Izotope Ozone for it. Recording, preamps, microphones, sound design, music writing, vocal tuning, arrangement, everything possible related to audio production. It's relatively affordable, you pay monthly, so it's easy to make payments. And the coolest thing, we have very powerful homework checking classes and you see results. And now you can attend one free trial class. You can see exactly how we learned with current guys who taking this course right now. Information how to contact me you can see on the screen. The next video will be in 2 weeks. Don't forget to attend the trial class. See you later.